The college football season winding down. Just a couple more Saturdays to go here before the college bowls kick off, but we've got plenty of big rivalry action to go. Hi everyone, Al DeMarco here, General Manager and Lead Handicapper of the world's largest online sports handicapping community. I've got 3 free picks coming your way, and the first game we're going to look at is Clemson and South Carolina. Now, the Clemson side, of course, last year, 31-14, an easy win, and Clemson has absolutely owned this series, winning 6 of the last 7, 10 of the last 12 meetings, and the Tigers have covered 6 of the last 8. But little word of caution, cheap price for Clemson, and I do like the Tigers, but keep in mind, the big game for Clemson, well, that's the ACC title game next week against Georgia Tech. As for South Carolina, Gamecocks are coming off a bye. They have lost 4 of their last 5. Now, no doubt, South Carolina has played a tougher schedule this year just simply by being a member of the SEC versus Clemson coming out of the ACC, and South Carolina playing for better bowl seeding. Still, all things considered, even though South Carolina has the home field edge, I would still rather lay the points with Clemson in this one. Your next game, it's the Egg Bowl. Now, I remember in years past, I used to play this one on Thanksgiving evening, and nobody would watch it because nobody really cared about the Egg Bowl. And maybe nobody cares about the Egg Bowl this year unless you're in Mississippi. You've got Ole Miss taking on Mississippi State, and hey, Ole Miss is the favorite in this one, and why not? Ole Miss on a 7-2-1 ATS run in this series. Last year, absolutely hammered Miss State 45-0, held Mississippi State to 24 total yards in last year's game. Houston Nutt, 10-1 straight-up lifetime against Mississippi State in his coaching career. Mississippi State, only 17 sacks this season. Now, I bring that up because Javon Sneed should have plenty of time to find his receivers in this contest, much like Ryan Mallett had last week by Arkansas. The Arkansas quarterback had a big game against this Mississippi State team last week in Little Rock in a 42-21 victory against Miss State. Meanwhile, Ole Miss, well, their defense, outstanding, 30 sacks, and let's face it, Miss State doesn't exactly have much of a passing attack. Meanwhile, Ole Miss, and guys, you got to pay attention here. Ole Miss, Miss State, I'll drive you crazy, right? Ole Miss, strong running game. Dexter McCluster. Most of you haven't heard of him, but you know, in his last 4 SEC games, 739 yards rushing. I love Ole Miss in this game. Go ahead and lay the points here in this rivalry with Mississippi. Ole Miss minus the points is your free pick. So your first 2 free picks, Clemson and Ole Miss. One of my favorite games on the board is Georgia Tech and Georgia. We're going to look at in just a moment after this brief commercial message. Free. You can't beat free. And guys, I've got an amazing free offer for you today. Hi everyone, I'm Al DeMarco, General Manager of the world's largest sports handicapping website, PickNation.com. 6 leading sports handicappers. How would you like to get their plays free for 3 days? Today, tomorrow, and the next day. Free for 3 days, the plays of Brett Atkins, Chuck O'Brien, Joel Tyson, Charlie Sutton, Jay McNeil, and Pete Angelo. All 6 handicapping experts at Pick Nation are yours free for the next 3 days. Just go to PickNation.com. Click on the free 3-day trial pass. That's all you've got to do, guys. All their plays for 3 days for free at PickNation.com. And when I say free, I mean it. You know, I spent about 10 years living in Atlanta, loved going to this game, one of my favorite games in college football. The Ramblin' Wreck taking on the Georgia Bulldogs. What a game last year. Yellow Jackets were down 28-12 at halftime. Came back and won it 45-42, ran for 409 yards as Paul Johnson's crew ended a 7-game losing streak in the series. Now, Georgia Tech is off a bye, and remember earlier I mentioned about Clemson. Well, Clemson is going to be taking on Georgia Tech in next week's ACC title game. Is this a potential look-ahead game for Georgia Tech? Maybe, but I don't think so because, guys, this is for the bragging rights of the Peach State. Georgia, meanwhile, losing at home in Athens last week. An embarrassing loss, 31-24 to Kentucky. 4 turnovers by the Bulldogs, 3 interceptions by their quarterbacks, Joe Cox. 2 of those turnovers leading to second-half touchdowns that gave Kentucky the victory. Listen, Mark Richt on the hot seat there, the Georgia head coach. Bulldogs have failed to cover 8 of their 11 this season. The key turnaround for this Georgia Tech team this year, now they've been getting the job done offensively all the year, but it's been the defense. The first 6 games of this season, they were giving up 26.5 points a game and 141 yards rushing per game. Their last 5 games, however, only 20 points per game yield and 95.6 yards per game on the ground. And Georgia Tech has played much better this year defensively. It's stopping the run when taking on pro-style offensive attacks, such as Georgia. So lay the 8 points. There will be no love loss here between these two teams. Georgia Tech wins it comfortably, I think, by somewhere in that 10 to 13 point margin. Now, a couple other games I just wanted to review with you since this is rivalry weekend. North Carolina and NC State. Guys, North Carolina definitely the better team defensively, but interesting here. You know, the underdog is on a 9-2 ATS run in this series, and the dog has scored 8 outright upsets in those last 11 matchups. Now, you might think, well, hey, NC State would be the play, right? Getting all the points. But consider this. Can you really back a Wolfpack defense that's given up 30 or more points in 8 straight games? In fact, in that 8-game stretch, 4 times they've given up 43 or more points. Plus, consider this. North Carolina last year was embarrassed, 41-10, 6 turnovers in that loss. So maybe the Tar Heels, in revenge, laying the points would be the way to go. How about Florida State? Do you realize this is the biggest number of points that Florida State has gotten since Bobby Bowden's first year in Tallahassee? I think that was 1976 when he was getting a couple or more points when he was taking on Oklahoma when the Sooners were in their heyday. Now, you would think maybe Florida State plus the points would be the way to go since Florida has the big look-ahead game with Alabama for the SEC championship next week. But then consider this. It's Tim Tebow's final game in the Swamp. Do you really think Florida is going to have a bad game in Tim Tebow's final game in Gainesville? Plus, consider this, the home team is on a 15-6 ATS run in this series. And Florida's won the last 2 games, 45-13 in average score against Florida State. And Florida State, of course, playing with its backup quarterback, making just his 3rd ever start. And the Gators have won 5 straight in the series, covering 4 of those 5. But again, does Florida take its foot off the pedal in the second half, knowing that Alabama is right around the corner? So that's something you've got to consider in those 2 games. But again, the free picks, you've got them: Clemson, Mississippi, and Georgia Tech. That'll do it. And remember, tomorrow, Steve Budin joins me as we break down 4 big NFL games for you from a point spread perspective. We'll catch you again tomorrow.